National Dialogue Committee expected to resume talks today at the Bomas of Kenya after receiving over 140 memoranda from Kenyans last week.
The whereabouts of former Mungiki leader Maina Njenga remain unknown, with Azimio leaders now accusing police of kidnapping him.
And in sports, congratulations to Kenya's national rugby sevens team for beating South Africa to qualify for the Paris 2024 Olympics.
Congratulations to Team Shujaa for that big feat, beating South Africa to qualify for the Olympics. And that's how we kick off this edition of Morning Cafe. Good morning. How hot is the coffee where you are? My name is Fred Ndimuli.
And I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyiringita. Today's proverb, by the way, comes from all the way in Congo, and it says, a bald-headed man will not grow hair just by getting excited. That is today's proverb, all the way from Congo. Today is actually the International Day for Patient Safety. We'll be getting live coverage of all that in AR in Muthaiga. Just getting to know how does it feel as a patient when you're getting into hospital, how you're treated and all that, how your safety really matters. That is what we'll be having on our conversation this particular morning.
Interesting.
Yes.
Before that, we'll be talking about the economy because that has been the biggest discussion this whole weekend following the hike in fuel prices last Friday. And so that will be a big discussion. Do stand by for that. But as you mentioned Congo, it just reminded me that just before I slept yesterday, there was some very serious rumors doing the rounds about what could be happening in the Congo Brazzaville. But the government of that country came out and said, no, there's nothing. So we're still observing, waiting for more news. Probably by mid-morning we'll know whether or not anything is really happening there.
All right.
So let's now take a look at our top story today. And it's all about rugby. The men's national rugby team, sevens team Shujaa, have qualified for Paris 2024 Olympic Games after defeating South Africa 17-12 in their final match of the Rugby Africa Sevens tournament yesterday in Harare that served as the Olympics qualifiers. Shujaa started the match on a slow foot and trailed with scores of 12-7 at halftime before making a comeback through Patrick Odongo's brace of tries, while John Okoth scored the winning try for Kenya in the dying minutes of the game. Shujaa, who have had a stellar campaign in the games, had earlier thrashed hosts Zimbabwe 35-10 in their semi-finals tie en route to the finals, where they were crowned African champions for the 6th time. Second-placed South Africa alongside third-placed Uganda are now expected to join teams from Asia, Europe, Oceania, North America and South America in the final qualification tournament slated for 12th of June next year. Just before we take a look at the dailies, a quick look at what's happening elsewhere. Stanley?
Right.
Diary.
Right. And actually before the diary, just to pose the question of the day this particular morning, but then it will definitely form a large basis of your conversation. So even for the viewer to definitely chime in on the same and even call in. Today we do ask you, is the Kenya Kwanza administration keeping its commitment to being hustler-friendly? Let me repeat that. Is the Kenya Kwanza administration keeping its commitment to being hustler-friendly? Talk to us. You've definitely seen what is happening in the country right about now. The administration 1 year in and 1 year and a week sort of now in. Do you think it is being hustler-friendly? That is the question of the day this morning. Our social media handles TV47KE on Facebook, at TV47 News on Twitter. Also Instagram, by the way, TV47 Kenya. Fred Ndimuli _ at Nyiringita _.
There's no underscore on mine. Is that Fred Ndimuli?
Fred Ndimuli. Oh,
Yes.
I think I'm too used to saying
Yes.
Even for Limuki.
Limuki _
Limuki _
Nyiringita _
Oh, yes.
is at Fred Ndimuli.
Right, now on today's dailies, for Daily Nation, the big man there, Kotu Secretary General, Kotu boss Francis Atwoli, and Daily Nation asks, is this an end of an era? So death of trade unions. And it says, wielding enormous power with the sizable constituency, country structures, and the potential to mobilize members on social or political matters, trade unions have always been a thorn in the flesh for successive governments, but not anymore. The workers' lobbies of 2023 have lost their spark and are now a pale shadow of their former self. More on that is on page 6 and 7. Below there, matters politics, cracks in Kenya Kwanza over taxes, cost of living, fuel prices, and they mention a number there, 211.64. That is the current cost of a litre of petrol in Nairobi. I don't know in Nairobi how much it is. Fuel prices crossed the 200 shillings mark for the first time in history following the government's latest review. This will have far-reaching consequences on households that are already struggling with the high cost of living. On the right side of Daily Nation, matters crime. Family now demands justice for girl found dead at City University. So questions abound of the murder of a Daystar University student within the institution's premises, with her family demanding answers. Mercy Jirono, 18, was killed just 4 days after reporting at Daystar's Athi River campus in Machakos County. And in sports this morning, matters rugby, our big story also. Kenya beats Zimbabwe to qualify for Paris Olympics. Kenya Shujaa yesterday became the second team spot from Kenya to qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympics after showing a lot of bravery to pick the direct ticket at the Rugby Africa Men's Sevens in Harare. Shujaa shocked World Rugby 7 Series core side South Africa 17-12 in the final to join women volleyball team Malkia Strikers, who qualified recently in Cameroon. More on that is on page 33. And today, Daily Nation's back page is on matters sports, matters Gor Mahia and the FKF league and how it is doing so far. That is on the front page of a Daily Nation.
On the Standard this morning, Kenya Kwanza, it will only get worse. That's a big headline on the Standard today. Kenya Kwanza says it will only get worse. On the cost of living, in the heydays of Tanga Group, they castigated Uhuru Kenyatta as a careless leader when prices of fuel hit 134 shillings a litre. Now in government and prices well over 200, they want you to prepare for even tougher times. And the story is on page 4. They even have a quote by one Ndindi Nyoro, the MP for Kiharu, from 2022, when he says, "It is now so despicable, insensitive, and inconsiderate of the government that we elected that their preoccupation every day is to add the cost of living to the people of Kenya." This was back in 2022. And I think I've seen this video doing a lot of rounds online of this Kiharu MP castigating the government back then for hiking fuel prices. Now that he is part of the Kenya Kwanza administration, he has remained curiously mum on the same matter. Meanwhile, the trade CS, Moses Kuria, is quoted as saying, "It is true that we are facing the challenge of soaring cost of living. There is nothing to hide. We as leaders are telling you the truth that the cost of fuel has skyrocketed all over the world. It will only get worse." Actually, the trade CS made a prediction that between now and February next year, the prices of fuel keep going up by about 10 shillings every month.
Yeah.
So that means if you do that calculation by February next year, it will be about 261 shillings per litre. This is before you even factor in the newly proposed VAT, 18%.
So
well,
possibility hits 300.
I think we're headed in that direction, unfortunately. The other big story on the front page of the Standard this morning, MP's big push for technology-assisted conception. Previous attempts by Suba North MP Emilio Odhiambo to enact laws to regulate technology-assisted conception failed. Pardon me. The indefatigable legislator is back with 2 new drafts, which says will offer reprieve to couples battling infertility. Interesting, that story is on page 2 of the Standard this morning. Technology and family planning.
Oh, yes.
Elsewhere, still on the front page, a tale of success from the streets to graduation. A graduate from Embu University shares his life's tough journey, born of a jobless single mother and later left to fend for himself and siblings until a well-wisher mobilized the community to fund his education. Elsewhere, man battles banks, powers on auctions. Other highlights on the top strip of the Standard. At the top there, new bill to tame rogue land-selling companies, and stories on page 8. On the international scene, old Museveni rides on past heroics. It's across the borders, page 22. And finally, in sports, Kipyegon closes season on a high, and that's sports, page 32. If you just turn over the paper to the back page on Matter Sports, Kipyegon closes a track season with another top performance, winning the 1500 meters race at the Eugene Diamond League on Saturday. There's also a photo of Simon Koech, who won the 3,000 meter steeplechase race at the same meet. And it's interesting that Kenyan sportsmen and women are doing us proud coming from that weekend. Yes, there's another one who won, who again?
Emmanuel Wanyonyi.
Oh, Emmanuel Wanyonyi, yes, Emmanuel Wanyonyi won the 800 meters race. Yeah, yeah, he shares a name with our director this morning. Congratulations, Manu. And that's the Standard this morning.
Right.
I think I've seen we have a copy of the Star.
Oh, yes, and even as a crossover to the Star, yesterday, the fact that the president was congratulating Shujaa, a number of comments there, people saying the support should be as loud as the congratulations. And even some people saying that now Kipyegon deserves another house in Eldoret. Remember that particular house she was bought in?
How many houses can she get? Surely. But at least I like the fact that in his congratulations, the president promised the Shujaa team that they're going to get everything they need. In that tweet, he said, everything you need as you prepare for the Olympics. So definitely, well,
hopefully
I don't know what to say about the kind of promises he has made in the past, but let's hope that this one he'll keep.
And if he is going to keep it, hopefully it is going to trickle down.
Yes.
To actually know those players. Now to the Star this morning, goes with Rogue Buddha's tough new laws on the way. So heavy fines and jail time for overloading, riding on pavements and wrong side of the road. More on that is on page 4 and 5. But inside, Ruto top guns under fire as cost of living soars. So they have inside there of Moses Kuria, that is CS Trade, CS Energy and Petroleum, Davis Chirchir and David Day. This is concerning their remarks over the weekend and that riot act by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. On the right side of the Star, was hospital boss poisoned before being stabbed. This is concerning the Nairobi hospital director who was killed in his house and actually stabbed 25 times. Made in Kenya, Shujaa upset SA to qualify for 2024 Paris Olympics. And on the top strip, Halwale, Malinya village boy who won't disclose number of kids. And he's actually raising 4 fingers there, probably counting number of kids he has there. This actually reminds me when he was, the video doing rounds, and he was somewhere, I believe in the western region. But then the residents there couldn't stomach what he was telling them.
Well, he always manages to convince them at some point. He's a politician worth his salt. He's been there for quite a while. So he knows, yes, once in a while he gets in the crosshairs of his constituents, but then they still listen to him. Are you done with the Star?
That is all for the Star this morning.
Okay, let's go to the Business Daily. The Business Daily this morning, Kakuzi bosses under probe over payments to related companies. CMA accuses officials of not disclosing interest in firms. Dispute headed to the Capital Markets Tribunal. That's the main headline on the Business Daily today. Another interesting one, given prominence there, is on healthcare. New NHIF premiums capped at 5,000 shillings for top earners. Remember, I think starting next month or the month after, the new NHIF remittance rates will be 2.75% of the gross salary. But for high earners, this will be capped at 5,000 shillings. And that's the story there on the front page of the Business Daily. Other stories on the ticker there, SRC marks more allowances for scrapping. Ruby's takes 4.7 billion shilling bond as payment for fuel subsidy. And KCB Corp Bank fight for second place in market value rankings. An interesting story there up on the top strip of the Business Daily this morning, the Boda Boda phenomenon in East Africa. They say it has yielded a working class of youth that have transformed many homes. Yes, we always criticize the Boda Boda and how they run their affairs. And I think it's in one of the dailies. I think the Star.
The Star, yeah.
But yeah, a different kind of assessment here. They've transformed many homes. This is a new crop of working class youth. And it's across East Africa region, not just Kenya. I know in Uganda, it's a big deal. It is a big deal. Yes.
And I can also see in Matters Life there, giving advice. Or you should do fertility checks just before marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Interesting. We should have that discussion this week.
Well, we'll definitely, have to look for the right minds for this conversation just before the, blame game begins in marriage.
Okay.
And all that. But actually, speaking of matters, blame game, Taifa Leo goes with the shoka juu yao. Rais Ruto ashinikizwa awateme mawaziri na maafisa kadhaa kwa mienendo yao isiyoridhisha. And Taifa Leo goes with upayukaji, huenda maafisa kadhaa wa ngazi ya juu wasidumu serikalini au wakahamishwa baada ya viongozi mbalimbali wa Kenya Kwanza, akiwemo naibu rais, kiongozi wa mawaziri na seneta Khalwale kumtaka rais achukue hatua kali dhidi ya warapokaji na wanaotepetea kazini. Habari kamili katika ukurasa wa pili. Na Taifa Leo imeweka picha za viongozi kadha wa kadha kati yao. Musalia Mudavadi anadokezwa kusema kuwa afisa yoyote anapoonyesha mienendo isiyofaa au kwenda kinyume na utaratibu, rais anaweza kufanya mageuzi, huku Daktari Khalwale akisema kuwa rais na kuhimiza wafute kazi mawaziri wa biashara, kawi na washauri wako wa kiuchumi. Mbali na hayo ni kuwa bila Faruk huwezi kuingia Ikulu. Hakuna anayeweza kumfikia rais bila kupitia kwa msaidizi wake Faruk. Kidokezo kingine ni kuwa KOTU sasa pia kugoma kwa ushuru. Muungano huo walia kodi ya juu ya mafuta ukisema ndiyo sababu ya bei kupanda. Na katika spoti ni kuwa Shujaa ndani ya Olimpiki, vijana wa nyumbani wa kanyaga majabali wa raga Afrika Kusini na kufuzu. Hapo juu utekaji nyara Maina Njenga, viongozi wa Azimio wafokea serikali kutumia ukatili wa polisi kutisha wafuasi wao. Mengi katika hayo ni ukurasa wa pili. Na katika michezo, ligi ya EPL, Chelsea bado jangwani. The Blues yakataa kupiga hatua EPL baada ya kutoka sare ya kuoma nafasi ya 14 na alama 5. Mengi katika ukurasa wa 20. Oh yes, I feel like at this time now I have decided to focus on other sports and just for the peace of
I know. I do understand. Any Man United fan is suffering from the same syndrome you're suffering from.
It's tough out here.
You can always defect. Well, let's look at the People Daily today.
All right.
I don't want to be too hard on Man U
All right.
fans today. It's only Monday. But then there's a highlight about Man United fans being unhappy. I'm looking at the People Daily, the front page, the big headline, fuel, why Kenyans are suffering. And the energy CS Davis Chirchir is quoted as saying, we had some covenants with IMF, but suddenly the pain is heavy. It is not going to be easy. And that's the theme, because each of these leaders is telling us that, yes, you may think it's bad right now, it's going to get worse.
And actually, to top into that, I mean, the CS Energy was saying on over the weekend, he's saying our hands are tied.
There's nothing much they can do.
Oh, yes.
The government has fallen short of money to stabilize prices, and IMF is piling pressure on Ruto to cut out subsidies. That is why you might suffer longer. The shilling has remained weak against the dollar as oil exporting nations reduce supplies, pushing up prices globally. Well, that's a big question. It has been the biggest discussion all weekend long. The other headline, Azimio protest Mainanjenga abduction. Opposition leaders demand that controversial sect leader be released amid reports that he was abducted by police squad. The story is on page 6. On the top strip of the People Daily, reshuffle, clock ticks for CSs over rising costs. Rigathi fires a fast warning shot of a minister's comments as Mudavadi hints at possible reorganization. The story is on page 5. And whether or not CS Moses Kuria and Davis Chirchir will still be cabinet secretaries after a few days, we wait to see. And then finally in sports, and I don't understand why they keep giving headlines about teams that lose. Man United fans unhappy with poor performance. Well, yeah, it should be expected. I'd rather they put their winners, people who are winning like Arsenal.
But you see, when you have a big name, it's you really just
you lose bigly.
Anyway, across the borders now to the East African, that will really set the pace for this entire week. And EA braces for war on terror as ATMIS exits. So as the African mission in Somalia leaves, the troops are carrying with them the continual burden of fighting Al-Shabaab terror activities across the region. More on that is on page 4 and 5. And there's also a story there really touching on Kenya's president. His Ruto scorecard on regional integration. An interesting read here. A year after taking office, Kenyan president gets fair rating on regional policies. Well, even after, I mean, taking a look at even his foreign policy, and this is a conversation, by the Fred, we've always been having on this table. His first day after being sworn in, the gaffe that he made on matters of foreign policy. It's interesting to take a look at now his scorecard when it comes to foreign policy. I
think he has redeemed himself. He's been quite busy outside Kenya's borders. He's made very serious speeches, especially on that issue of climate change and climate action. I think he's the de facto African leader on matters climate action discussion. So yeah, in as far as that is concerned, and remember he has done a PhD on some stuff to do with botany and some science there. So when he speaks about some things like food and climate, he has something to offer.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Another highlight there on the East African, Africa's seat at G20. So the AU celebrated its admission to the G20 last week. But what does it mean for its member states? That is on page 8. Remember the 78th UNGA meeting, United General Government Assembly coming up, the big debate tomorrow. And on the top strip there, matters money, Africa worried over looming debt crisis. At least 23 countries are expected to pay $68.9 billion in 2023. And in matters markets, smart branches are the rave here. Kenyan banks are combining digital and the physical. In an outlook, battle for Africa, it's all in surveillance. Race to create and exploit information infrastructure. And from that, still in matters Kenya, fuel prices rise in Kenya yet again. So latest review suspends fund, raising prices by 13%. More on page 12. that is on the East African. Tuende Bongo au tuende Kampala?
Acha tuanzie Kampala. In Uganda, the Daily Monitor goes with government in race to replace 5,000 retiring teachers. According to the Education Service Commission validation report, 6 out of every 10 teachers are above 40 years, and of these, 4,940 are above 50 years and nearing retirement. Also, the picture there, students returning to school for third term, featuring there on the front page. Other stories given prominence there on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Kadaga claims credit for tax-free diapers. On the top strip, raw milk, major cause of brucellosis. Elsewhere, Museveni pledges to support musicians. And finally, city traders protest over withholding tax. Those are the main stories on the Daily Monitor in Uganda this morning.
And now tuelekee Bongo in Tanzania. I'll start with Mwananchi. Katika gazeti la Mwananchi, habari kuu ni vinara wa uhalifu waikwepa sheria. Yumo kinara wa usafirishaji twiga kwenda Qatar aliyehukumiwa kifungo miaka 15 jela. Wengine wasankwa kwa mauaji Moshi baada ya kutoroka yumo JJ. Na siku ambazo Kamran Ahmed amefikisha tangu atoroke baada ya kuruka thamana katikati ya usikilizwaji wa kesi yake ya utoroshaji wa nyama hai, na siku hizi ni 3465. Vidokezo vingine katika gazeti la Mwananchi ni kuwa Samia kemea kuwacheza ngoma wasichana wadogo. Mengine hayo ni kuwa Rais Suluhu Hassan amesema utamaduni wa kuwacheza ngoma wasichana wakiwa katika umri mdogo ni moja ya mambo yanayosababisha mimba za utotoni kwa wanafunzi wa kike. Mengine ni kuwa mchuano mkali pazia likifungwa. Bali na hayo ni kuwa TPA yatangaza zabuni ujenzi wa bandari 2. Hayo ndio vidokezo, hivyo ndio vidokezo vikuu katika gazeti la Mwananchi.
Okay, we look at the Citizen. This is the English equivalent of the Mwananchi in Tanzania. The main headline, ways Tanzania can attract more private capital. Tanzania can surpass its peers in East Africa in private capital if corrective measures are taken to address some shortcomings as the region's performance soars in attracting foreign direct investments through private equity venture capital. That's a big headline on the Citizen this morning. Other stories making it to the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania. Smiles for 45 women after successful IVF at Kairuki Hospital. And Samia speaks up against early pregnancies. And yes, those are the main stories making it to the front page of the Citizen this morning. Turejea hapa Kenya tuangalie mambo ya Karakacha.
Oh yes. On the Standard this morning is on page 12, and definitely has to do with matters, the bipartisan talks and the Bomas talks. Fred, you can do us the honors.
Yes, the two gentlemen seated across the table from each other, but they all appear to be hiding the cards behind their backs.
As you continue, can...
Okay. Stanley will do us the favor. So they appear to be hiding cards behind their backs, not putting the cards on the table. It's as simple as that. And I think, as you correctly mentioned, it has a lot to do with the ongoing talks at the Bomas of Kenya that are resuming today.
Oh, yes. And actually today sets the agenda. They'll be now discussing the first agenda, that is IEBC reconstitution, and thereafter continue the other. I think about the 4 or 5 thematic areas of this agenda. So, taking a look at what really forms now the matters IEBC and all that. They decided to first start with IEBC. I mean, Kenyans would be curious, why not?
It's an interesting conversation at a time when even Kenyans, I think, are otherwise preoccupied with other discussions, especially on matters economy. The cartoon on page 13 of the Daily Nation today, it's on fuel pricing. And the vehicle appears to have driven off the road.
Veered off.
The road came to an end, but the vehicle, according to the driver, says that the manual, the bottom-up economic model says, keep driving. Interesting. I think it may have captured exactly what is going on in our country today, especially on matters fuel pricing.
Oh, yes.
It's a similar theme on the cartoon on the People Daily, page 10 of the People Daily. And the pump, the fuel pump, the nozzle is actually strangling a Kenyan.
Oh.
How high can we go? Kenyans are choking under the high prices of fuel.
Well, this even as senior government officials giving Kenyans alternatives that if you want cheaper fuel,
Chimba kisima yako.
chimba kisima yako.
Yes. Well, that's the main discussion we'll be having today with my panelists. Allow me just to mention who we are having today. Yes, Dr. Churchill Saokia, governance expert, Honorable Basil Robert, MP Yata, and Munywa Wayaki, economist and politician. On State of the Nation, today we focus on matters economy and what the high taxation and high fuel prices mean for Kenyans. That after the break. Remember, on our question this morning, we're asking, has the Kenya Kwanza administration remained true to its promise of being hustler-friendly? Keep the conversation going on our social media pages at TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya Facebook. Will be sampling your views as we continue this broadcast. So do stand by for that discussion after the short break. You're watching Morning Cafe. On TV47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We now want to get down to the discussion, but before that, remember our question. Has the Kenya Kwanza administration remained true to its promise of being hustler-friendly? That's the question we're asking on our social media pages, and you can share your feedback on that at TV47 News on X and TV47 Kenya on Facebook. With me in studio right now is the Honorable Basil Robert, MP Yata constituency, and Munywa Wayaki, economist and also a politician. Good morning, gentlemen. Karibuni sana.
Morning to you.
In a short while, Dr. Churchill Sauke, a governance expert, will be joining the panel. But before that, gentlemen, it has been a busy weekend discussing about the fuel prices. And it would appear that Kenyans are not getting a break. The cabinet secretaries or senior government officials are not offering any hope either. They're just saying it is going to get worse. That is a headline on the People Daily this morning, and it's also on the Standard, why it will get worse. And it is from that standpoint that we want to approach this conversation. The fact that we've just come from an election 1 year ago, and it would appear that we are short of solutions. The kind of response to the uproar of high fuel prices is being met with a simple, don't worry, it will even get worse. Let's start with you, Munywa.
Good morning, viewers. My name is Munywa Wayaki. In the last election, as you say, I vied for gubernatorial seat in Nakuru, but that is water under the bridge. In regard to whether we have solutions of the current problems that are facing this country, I would say that we have a handful of solutions. What we are short of is brains. Mm-hmm. We are short of brains. Why would I say this? Because when you see seriously a cabinet secretary who has been bestowed that privilege of serving Kenyans as the CS for trade talk the way Kuria did, mm-hmm. that would tell you the type of government we have in place. Actually, there is a saying that says that, show me your friend, I tell you who you are. So show me your cabinet secretaries, and I tell you the type of an administration mm-hmm. we are having. 365 days are enough days to have solutions to most of these serious problems that we are facing as a country. In fact, when they were campaigning, they were talking of 100 days. So these already 3 times the period they were talking about. So I would say we are facing the problems that we have today because of non-commitment from our leaders, because of lack of the right team. Mm-hmm. You know, when you want to crack a nut, you must have the right spanner. We do not have the right spanners to crack the problems that we have as at now.
Okay. Yes. Honorable Basil, it is also incumbent upon us and upon all Kenyans to understand that there are issues. And probably what the CS for trade and the CS for energy are saying is that we're simply telling you the truth. Even the president's economic advisor, David D, says, I'm simply telling you the truth. I will not sugarcoat it. But should we just receive the truth as is and accept? Because the truth is the truth. If at all that is the bottom line, then why are we really unhappy at the kind of response we're getting from these senior government officials?
Well, but first, thank you for inviting me. I want to say I don't think these guys are saying the truth, because the government-to-government negotiation is a scam. Why am I saying so? If you talk of the negotiation, tell me which government is negotiating with Kenya. It's actually 3 companies, which are private companies, negotiating on behalf of Kenya. And this is where the scam is. So if you look at the crude oil today, it's retailing at $93.93 globally. In the Kenyan pump, it's 200 shillings. So that's a white lie, you know. So we expect lower oil prices in Kenya. But someone somewhere is making a deal. That's what I would say.
Well, but the prices of oil across even the region, they are at the same level. It's not just Kenya. Even in Tanzania, they're experiencing the same thing. Definitely, there has to be a link about what's happening elsewhere beyond our borders that is not just exclusive to us.
Well, but if you know, the idea is if there was competition here, the price would go down. Mm-hmm. But what we are seeing is basically a monopoly. We have 3 companies, which are private companies, purported to be negotiating in the disguise of government-to-government negotiation. And that's why I'm saying the government-to-government negotiation, to me, is a scam.
Okay.
Because if you look at the crude oil per barrel globally is at $93.93. But if you look at the pump price in Kenya, it's over 200 shillings. So if you try to understand the arithmetic here, it tells you someone somewhere is lying. Okay. But if you open for competition, the price is going to go down. Mm-hmm. And you see, remember when President Ruto was campaigning, he said one of the reasons why he wants to vie for office is to lower cost of fuel. And that is the reason why hustlers, all of them, rallied behind the head of state. But to the surprise of many Kenyans, what we are seeing is increased price of fuel. Actually, this is the highest in history. Mm-hmm. And the ripple effect of this is actually an increased cost of goods in all cost of goods and services. If you talk of basic commodities, the price is going to go high. If you talk of education, we are likely to see revised rates for school fees. If you talk of doctors' charges, we are likely to see increased health charges. What about the earnings of common Kenyans? Most Kenyans are really struggling. Unemployment is above the roof. The Kenya Kwanza government did say they are going to open opportunities for youth. But the majority of our youth today, they're out there with the papers, with no employment. Okay. Now, if you increase cost of everything, what are you trying to say? It's survival for the fittest. Mm-hmm. Those with the diversified income will be able to survive, but those with nothing are likely to either be eliminated or like the situation will be unbearable for them. That's why we say it's a disastrous time.
The situation is already unbearable for many Kenyans.
Yes.
But the leaders are saying it will get worse. Allow me to introduce Dr. Churchill Sauke into the panel. Daktari, karibu sana. You're a governance expert. Just looking at the kind of response the Kenya Kwanza leaders are giving the Mwananchi. Yes, they're saying, yes, you may be right in complaining about the skyrocketing price of fuel. Let's talk about fuel for now. We'll talk about even the taxation later. But they're saying we're simply telling you the truth. And this is a truth that you should be able to swallow. What do you say to that?
You know, leading people in a country requires a lot of management. And you got to find a way of how do you balance the pains of people with what really benefits them to an extent that the population then is able to accept a regime as one that is of their interest. And it's a balance that really requires thought process into it. And you must then be careful on how you communicate government policies and how you communicate government moves, to an extent that you do not end up creating fights between the people and you. And that is now what we are seeing now. You might be wanting to tell people the truth that is paining them, but how are you communicating that truth? And how true is that truth you're talking about? I mean, Muhesh is already is already casting doubts onto that truth, meaning there are people out there who doubt the truth you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And how you communicate that truth will make them believe that truth or not. So I think one of the things that I would say is that from a perspective of governance is that, you know, the government must be very deliberate on how they get to feel the pains of Kenyans, mm-hmm. and get ways of cushioning the pains of Kenyans, not by defending themselves. Because, you know, transnational issues that affect the microeconomics of a country will always exist. They have existed throughout regimes since nations started. But it's incumbent on governments to find ways of domesticating those transnational policies to an extent that the population is protected and cushioned from the pains of those transactional issues. So it should not be a scapegoat that there are global economic hard times. The question is, you are in leadership. There are people who elected you. How are you domesticating these issues to an extent that people don't feel the pain the way the other people are feeling it?
Is it a communication problem? Because we've seen even the reaction by the Deputy President immediately he came back from his visit in Colombia, that he took to Twitter to castigate or to rebuke some of the pronouncements by high or top leaders in the country. Surely there must be a better mechanism of communicating such. Why would he take to Twitter to talk to a cabinet secretary, for example?
I think it points into a deeper problem that exists, and it goes beyond communication. Communication is actually just bringing the manifestation of the deeper issue. And I think that the deeper things that are at play could be deep-seated interests that are networked within this whole mix of what is causing the hard times. And the certain pronouncement of some of the key figures in government, they could be just saying that, you know what, there is no other way for me to say this. There's no other avenue for me to say that I don't like this, but what do I do? If you read in between the lines, apparently there are people who are like, you know the way you'll want to say you don't like this, but you can't say directly. So that's the kind of thing. So there is a deep-seated problem that could be showing inner battles that are having the interests at play that is now manifesting as a communication anarchy.
And perhaps it presents another political opportunity, especially to take a look at what's happening inside Kenya Kwanza. So far, 1 year later, they've appeared to be one single unit. They've worked under the president quite smoothly, all of them speaking in one voice under the president. Whether it serves the people or not, this is the first time we're seeing open cracks. This issue about fuel prices could just be the beginning of some serious squabbling within Kenya Kwanza administration, don't you think?
Fred, I would tell you, working together, as you put it, is dangerous for this country. If we would reflect back to when we had KANU as single-party state, we used to say that Fuata Nyayo and all those kind of shenanigans. But that was the height of dictatorship of that regime. So, because I have worked closely with these people who are in this government, they are my friends. And what I would tell you, that this is a one-man show. You will find some of these even cabinet secretaries saying that for them to make serious decisions, they have to consult their boss. They call him their boss. But this country is not about one person. And there are some pointers, serious pointers, to show you that this is a one-man show, whereby if you start criticizing this government, you are branded like you are an enemy to the government. If you want to be competitive even in the world of business, feedback is key. It has to be at the very core of your business. For example, TV47, you are competing within other media houses. Why would you feel intimidated when people bring their feedback to you? One thing that is a great problem with this Kenya Kwanza government is whenever you say something that is alternative from what they think is right, you become their enemy. That is why we experienced the police brutality, something that is backward. We never expected at this era and time we would be experiencing police brutality, things that we used to fight when we were in the university and also in high schools in 90s. Number two, if you would rate this government based on the promises that they made, they have achieved literally nothing. And they have nothing to run with. At least you would say a government that is performing has 4 or 5 agendas that they are trying to run with. For example, we had the Moi Kibaki government. They said we want universal free primary education. We saw it happen. Actually, we had parents complaining that there are no desks, but pupils and students are running, though they are sitting under the trees or even on the floor, but they are running. So you could see that kind of drive towards what they stand for. But this government does not have that zeal towards what it campaigned for. For example, they talked of electricity. Where is electricity today? They talked of employing youths. How many youths have been employed? They talked of building 100 dams. How many dams have been built so far? They talked of establishing a commission to look into state capture, because they used to say that Uhuru government had a lot of state capture. I remember Honorable Gachagua was saying it. Has the commission been established? They talked of stopping leasing out Mombasa port. Have they done that? They talked of providing cheap smartphones, which can create employment. How many phones how many cheap smartphones have been supplied to our young people? They talked of 3 months supply of diapers, cheap diapers. Has it happened? They talked of cutting down government spending. Last week we had Musari outside the country, we had Honorable Rigathi Gachagua outside the country, we had His Excellency the President outside the country. They talked of bringing down the dollar exchange rate. As we speak now, I'm sure in these papers when I look, it is going up to around 149, the highest ever. They talked of increasing the salaries of the policemen. In fact, instead of increasing the salaries of those policemen, they are using the policemen against the population of this country, the people who they used to get into power.
Certainly, they increased by 1,000 shillings.
Well, actually, they talked of increasing, but they have also reduced the personal relief. So the net of effect. Mm-hmm. Then finally, they talked of free NHIF. Where is it, the universal?
There are 2 bills. There are 3 bills, actually, to repeal NHIF, and they take effect. I think they'll be in Parliament this month. Starting next month, something new will be in place.
This issue of within a very short time, within 30 days, within what period of time, we are actually tired of being given promises. You would rather talk of one thing that happens than 1,000 promises that you never fulfill.
Okay.
Actually, I wouldn't wish to miss this last one. Mm-hmm. They said that they would ensure that in each and every year, they would list 5 to 10 companies in Nairobi Stock Exchange. How many companies have been listed? Mm-hmm. It is now 365 days.
Okay.
Yeah. Where do you take us for a ride?
Has the Kenya Kwanza administration remained true to its promise of being hustler-friendly? That's the question we're asking today. In our social media handles, TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya on Facebook. Kindly interact with us as we continue with the show. We take a break. When we come back, we'll be discussing the taxation that we expect in the next few months. Don't go away. Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. I'm in studio with the Honorable Basil Robert, MP Yatta, Munyo Wayaki, economist and politician, and Dr. Churchill Sauke, a governance expert. Today we want to look at the state of the nation with a special focus on what's happening, the cost of living and the economy. Gentlemen, we've seen what has happened this year. And it's been a series of increases and pain for Kenyans. We started off with the finance bill that now is an act that introduced a raft of new taxation. It's already low, and people are already paying that tax. Then the fuel price went up. Now we are seeing a proposal, medium-term strategy plan for the government for the year 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, that is aimed at raising about 650 billion shillings through more revenue. Already the cabinet secretaries are telling us it is going to get worse in as far as fuel is concerned. When you subject a population to pain consistently, what is the net effect? Because usually you accompany some pain with some form of relief. Now, so far, Kenyans will say they've not had any relief since this government came into place. Let's start with you.
Yeah. One, I think I'll go back to the budget. If you look at the budget that was passed, 3.6 trillion, 2 trillion went to the executive. What are we likely to say here? Mm-hmm. This is wastage. 2 trillion will never come back. 1.4 for development. So this government has nothing to expect from them. And that's why we are saying these are going to be tough. So let's think. As citizens, it's the time to say enough is enough. Actually, the bipartisan talks, the agenda number one is to lower cost of living. Fuel has gone up. So are these people serious? Is this the time for bipartisan? Sorry?
Do you believe that the bipartisan talks could actually offer any remedy to what we're experiencing right now?
Well, the reason why...
even if they put the cost of living on the table.
The reason why it was constituted, one is to look at the increased cost of living. That was agenda number one. And that's a simple reason people are going for maandamano. In exercising their rights in Article 37 of the Constitution. Now, when we see consistent increment of fuel, when the talks are already ongoing, is an indication that someone is not serious on what is going on in the talks. Mm-hmm. We should have expected outcome from the talks, making proposals to the government on how to mitigate or manage the issues raised by Kenyans. Mm-hmm. Now, what is happening is to tell us very likely that maybe something negative or whatever is going to be resoluted by the talks may not be respected. Because if someone is respecting a discussion going on, then they should not have increased cost of fuel. If they say it's about the global fuel prices, there are ways to cushion citizens from increased cost of oil. This is where you bring subsidies, you take away these things you are calling government-to-government negotiation, because government-to-government negotiation, as I said, is a scam. Mm-hmm. We need to encourage competitors, because when there is competition, there is hope. In any business, if there is competition, prices are relatively going to be stable. And when they were campaigning, they talked of bottom-up. I don't know whether they meant making life harder for the low person or the person the lowest level of the economic pyramid, or taking money from the person who is earning nothing to support lavish lifestyle. I don't know that that's exactly what they meant by bottom-up. Mm-hmm. Because a bottom-up approach, in my mind and from an economic front, I thought, is a situation whereby you take needs of people at the lower level, incorporate these needs in terms of trying to be able to come up with the programs, policies, and strategies that resonate to the needs of the person who is at the lowest level. Mm-hmm. That is what a bottom-up approach could be, whereby you don't plan for people without involving them, basically. But now what we have been seeing with this particular government is a situation whereby people make promises, a lot of traveling, wastages, and not committed to make life bearable for common citizens.
At
For
least
example,
they've remained true to one promise, that they will not use subsidies, the subsidy method, to actually relieve any sort of pain that the Mwananchi may be feeling. On this one, Dr. Sauke, the Kenya Kwanza administration has been very persistent in its insistence that the kind of pain and problems we're facing right now should be blamed on the previous administration, Uhuru Kenyatta's government. And they've managed to do that up until now. And David Ndii says that we've abused debt for so long and at such a scale that we cannot no longer look in that direction again for relief. Don't you think that maybe there's some truth in what this administration is saying, that the situation is so bad that the only way we can get out of it is the pain we're going to experience over the next 3 years or so through high taxation, lack of subsidies, and probably by the end of it will be much better in terms of our debt will be much lighter probably?
It could be true or not true. And the question is that, we have had debt before, and you might blame previous regimes of an appetite, as it has been called, an appetite for debt. The question is that, has this helped Kenyans before? And did it help to spur economic growth in the country? And when you compare that with the current as is now, which one is better? Because I think governance is about looking at policy options and choosing that which is best for the country. The point is that, and these are discussions that are going on in different kinds of places in this country, you might want to be consolidating and trying to get money in the name of cushioning trying to get the country off debt within a period of 2 years, yet in the process, you are using that opportunity to consolidate money to yourself instead of money for the development. Now, if right now we have hiking the taxes to repay back our debts, there is a structure of spending that was happening before when that debt was there. We are not privy to that structure of spending now. Mahesh has just said right now that we are having close to 1 billion going to executive spending.
2 trillion.
2 trillion, right? 2 trillion going to executive spending. How much would that have helped us in repayment of our debt, even without thinking about taxation? So ain't we not being ingenuine to claim that we are restructuring our debt and working on repayment of our debt by raising the cost of people's living up? I think there is malice in it, and it doesn't make microeconomic sense at all. Mm-hmm. There are ways that if you are a benevolent leader who is looking at the best interest of the people, and you're not just looking at monies that will come into your pocket, you can cushion the people. In fact, if the debt issue was the problem, there would have been a gradual restructuring of the debt to an extent that it does not have a high impact or a heavy impact on the population.
Are you proposing probably that all these taxation measures should have been gradual, a bit more gradual?
The taxation measures maybe should have been gradually implemented, that's one. And then two, even the tax, repayment of the tax, there were attempts of governments across the world during the COVID period to have an agreement with their creditors on how they can stagger the tax regime to an extent that it does not become heavy on the loanees. Why aren't we doing that? The previous regime tried to do it. Why do we want to think that our people are so rich that we can tax them so much within a period of 2 years and repay all the debt within 2 years? Then after that, is this country ending after 2 years?
The other question has been that, yes, the Kenya Kwanza administration may have opted for higher taxation. There are other suggestions that probably they would have reduced government wastage. And when Mheshimiwa talks about 2 trillion shillings, there's the admission by the former president that that government loses about 2 billion shillings a day. And if you calculate that over 2-3 years, it comes to about the same figure that they're seeking to raise through revenue collection. Wouldn't it have been easier to go that route? Or is it an impossible route to take, reducing government wastage and sealing corruption loopholes?
Fred, before I even respond whether it is possible or impossible to reduce these loopholes, because like corruption has become our lifestyle. Because some of those people who are shouting on top of trees talking about corruption, they are actually children of corruption. Anyway, the moment you see somebody disown his own work, even scholarly work, that actually indicates the motive that was behind that thing. Dr. Ndi is a person who is the author of the model that Kenya Kwanza government is using, the bottom-up. But he's, as we speak now, you've just mentioned him, he's at loggerheads with these people because he's like saying it cannot work. And he's the author of the model, meaning he never authored this thing because he had belief in it, that bottom-up can work. So that one, now one proves to be a Pharisee. And that now makes the whole concept be based on foundations of lies. So where are we going? We do not have a roadmap. That is where we start from. Number two, the issue of corruption in this country has been talked and talked over time. I remember during Aaron Ringera's time at the EACC, he said that this is slaying a dragon. And when you try to slay a dragon, you cut one head, 9 heads come out. So it is not as easy. However, there are some basic concepts that you do not need to be whatever, rocket scientist to understand this. For example, if we empower our people to produce locally, maize, sugar, all these imports, rice, name them, of course, the prices of goods will come down. If we borrow, for example, the way Daktari has just said, if we borrow and spend here, because among the things that bring the circulation of money and that wealth creation is government spending. The first core policy is about public expenditure and public revenue. How do we spend our public money? Mm-hmm. How do we generate our money? So we can borrow and spend and create infrastructure that will bring production of wealth. And through that wealth, we shall be in a position to tax people. But you cannot talk of not borrowing and not spending. Mm-hmm. So the net effect is the same. Then, when you talk of wastage, and you are not inward looking, why am I saying inward looking? As a government, you are talking of corruption and wasteful spending. As we speak, there is a debate that Likoni Bridge, the floating bridge, will be demolished because it was done by another regime. And it is spent close to 1.2 billion. As we speak, we are at the verge of phasing out the current police uniform, which also took taxpayers' money. Why? Because it was not initiated by this regime. At the moment, we are phasing out Huduma number, which took so much resources of the taxpayer. Why? Because it was initiated by another government. My question, and my very simple question, doesn't a government exist in perpetual succession? There is that perpetual succession. The policies that were made by the government of 1960s should be in continuation, because we do not take a single regime or political dispensation in isolation. This is just a continuous government. That is why we have Vision 2030. It will not matter whether it is Dr. William Ruto who is the president, or it is Fred who will be the president tomorrow, because this is an institution. But when we start personalizing issues, this shows the irresponsibility that is tagged on Kenya Kwanza government.
Honorable Basil, the issue of corruption, it would appear very many leaders are reluctant to talk about this issue. Are we giving up? Because, and it's not just in the Kenya Kwanza administration, it's across board. People rarely talk about it. It's obvious there is an opportunity to at least reduce the kind of wastage. But no one is interested in talking about, even at the parliamentary level.
Well, I think you can't say at the parliamentary level we don't talk about corruption. We do. Actually, we have a caucus on anti-corruption. That is corruption caucus, basically. I'm a member of that caucus. So the only issue is, in Kenya, the way we fight corruption is more skewed to people who are in opposition. Actually, those who are in government are only targeted if they tend, or if there is an outcry from the community. I would give an example of Madago, the former governor. The issue on Finland scam, the graft involving Finland, when the community rose up and told the president, we want that Finland issue revisited. That's the time when we saw the EACC acting on Governor Madago, the current senator today. But before then, there was no action from the government. So if you look historically, what has been happening, it is the fight against graft is skewed, is only done to people who are not with the government. Those who are with the government, they are absorbed, cleared, and supported. We saw the way the current CS were appointed. So many of the current CS today had outstanding cases of graft. But for them to be put or to be elected or to be appointed to office, what happened is their cases were dropped. And they were sanitized. When you come to parliament...
With a stamp of parliament.
When you come to parliament, there is element of majority and minority. And majority of our Azimio members were actually, I would say, bought by the government. That's a Sunday reality. It's all among few, myself and others, who stood on our ground and say this is not the way we want things done.
Hence my assumption that even Parliament is weak when it comes to discussing issues of corruption.
The issue is the party issues. Because you see, you find like the Kenya Kwanza, anyone in Kenya Kwanza, so long as the president says this is the way, they are all whipped to follow that particular direction.
Is that what will happen when even some of these new taxation proposals...
But you saw what happened with the finance bill.
So it is as good as done.
Yeah, myself, I told them, look, you cannot increase fuel from 80% to 16%. If you have to do it in a gradual way. You cannot overtax your people and assume you are going to achieve success by overtaxing Kenyans who have nothing. If you look at advanced economies, taxations are there. I saw someone making a comparison between the cost of living in the UK and the cost of living in the US or the cost of living in Kenya. This is like comparing beans and maize. If you look at United States, I lived in the US. The cost of living in the US, yes, is quite high, but there are many opportunities. If you go walking around, you see everyone, we are hiring. And they also have a minimum wage, such that if you increase taxes, you also increase the wage of people. And this is what you call cushioning people to be able to survive under economic challenges. If you come to our country today, you increase taxes, but you don't care. How do your people survive? And that's why we see social vices like prostitution is going to increase. Drug abuse is going to go up. Suicides and other negative effects of hardships are going to come up.
Are you resigned to the fact that Parliament will simply rubber stamp anything that this executive says?
With the way it is structured today, let me not put my head under the sun. The truth is, anything that comes to Parliament, so long as it is introduced by government, is likely to sail through. We are going to oppose it as opposition, few of us, but majority will carry the day. Okay. And that is the Sunday reality we have in Parliament today.
Dr. Sauke, among the proposals is to increase the rate of VAT from 16 to 18%. Even without that increase, fuel prices are already over the roof. The fact that they will continue rising up until February, as predicted by CS Kuria, has nothing to do with this VAT proposal. That means that even into next year, we are heading towards a 300 shilling mark per litre of fuel.
I think, and it's pretty predictive, which brings a lot of doubt into it. I mean, the fuel fluctuations around the world is never predetermined to increase. there are instances that it should decrease. And so you'll expect some staggering of the fuel prices. And, you know, so the projection that it's going to increase by 260 by February is too predeterministic to an extent that it could be well orchestrated. And that would be pretty unfortunate. And, you know, one of the things that, one of the macroeconomic effects that it will have, the fuel prices and the increase in the VAT on the people, is that people will be careful to invest on things that would have in the long run increased you know, revenue for this country. At a micro level, you will be safer having investments that would ensure that you have your family is able to be fed every day, than having long-term investments that could generate income for you and also increase the GDP of the country. So it is something that right now when you're driving along the roads, you can already see that vehicles are getting fewer on the roads, because people are already beginning to feel the effect of the what? Of the high cost of living, and they're now prioritizing what is important: paying fees for my children and food for my family.
And what kind of impact do you expect that to have on the economy when you stifle spending within the population by higher taxation?
The things that you'll expect is that on an ideal scenario, you'll expect that the revenue base will grow for the country, but it's not necessarily so. You might end up having a reduction because people will find ways of circumventing those taxations. Because they need to survive. They'll want to seek survival tactics. And one of those survival tactics will be to collude with officers to circumvent the tax. That's one. Two, you might end up having people seeking ways of paying that tax irregularly through corruption. So in the long run, you might end up having more evils, as has been said, of people wanting to get money to survive. Some of it might be through black market that is not conventional. So
how come they are so arrogantly dismissing the same?
I would say this. I have a lot of respect for our president, Dr. William Ruto. He's a sharp guy. And I would wish to cite two cases. There is a time when he was a minister for agriculture, and there is a time he was a minister for higher education. And he performed exemplary well. But I'm worried by the team that surrounds Dr. William Ruto, up and including his deputy. Because what I've seen from those guys is mediocrity. They can never make something that is good for this country. Theirs is just to chest thump. Why am I saying this? When the parliament, kina mheshimiwa here, approved a finance bill, in page 17 of today's Nation newspaper, I can see that KRA has corrected 317 billion, up from 280 billion in 2 months, a rise of 13.3%. It is reported in these papers, if I would quote them as an authority. And of course, these Nation and Standard are authorities. What have we done with this money that we have corrected? Far from now talking about fuel, because this country is not only premised on fuel. What have we done with this correction that we have made? He talked of recurrent expenditure, that spending in wasteful nature. That is why we can have 3 government officials outside this country and coming back with having negotiated nothing. When the president was in USA, he talked of bringing investors from the United States to invest in Kenya. As we speak, we are having capital flights because of electricity. A country that can experience 19 hours of unexplained blackout. Who on earth can you to come and invest in that kind of a country? Because that one, Mheshimiwa, and your parliament is yet to tell us what was happening. We are really waiting for 19 hours. And when we tell them to explain to us, they just rush and sack people in KAA rather than do something in Kenya Power. You can see how irresponsible we are. Now, when we talk of taxation enforcement, the way we are approaching it, I was looking at last week, they were saying that they are training askaris from KRA who will be visiting home after another to see whether you. This is quite mechanical. When Dr. William Ruto was coming to power, he talked of digital superhighway. And that one, I was in agreement.
What did he mean by digital superhighway?
Creating ways of working with internet and those cheap smartphones. These traffic jams you see on the road could be jams on these whatever phones, because we are working from our houses. I like the way judiciary is going.
But they have cameras on the roads.
I mean, for example, look at the way judiciary is going. Nowadays, we do not have congestions within the courtrooms. We are doing that.
People have given up with the courts.
No,
They are virtual options.
That, Fred, you can attest, is it? So people are doing their submissions from the comfort of their sitting rooms. If we would do the same with other sectors, whereby we do not have to drive to the studio here, we empower our internet to be so powerful that, Fred, you can get me clearly from home rather than invite me here, plus many other sectors. That is what we call digital superhighway. And when you create that digital superhighway, the revenue that will be generated from that kind of wealth creation can be taxed digitally. You do not have to empower a police officer to go knocking at people's gates to look like those council askaris who actually come and cramp your vehicle, which is so mechanical. So what we are getting wrong here, Fred, the president could be having the will, but the team behind him, he got the very wrong team. I saw him introduce Adan Muhammad as the CS for Trade and Investment. Why? Because he is ashamed of introducing somebody like Kuria as the CS for Trade. He cannot even go out with him because of the nonsense that you saw from his utterances.
Okay. In the raft of proposals that's yet to come to Parliament, there's a lot of new taxation that's going to affect the larger population. And this was a promise that the president said his administration was going to widen the tax bracket. Do you, for example, welcome the taxation on agricultural products? Farmers to be taxed 5% on the produce they deliver, either to KECC or to NCPB, or do you see that as more pain? Remember, up till now, the people who have been complaining about taxation are people in formal employment who have pay slips, and they're seeing their pay slips dwindling. But these other groups, farmers, surely, isn't it right for this administration to actually include them in the tax-paying bracket as well?
Fred, I think from onset I said I don't agree at all with any new taxation that has been introduced by Kenya Kwanza. You cannot tax you cannot overtax your citizens in the disguise that you're going to push the country to prosperity. No country has ever moved to prosperity through overtaxing its citizens. So that is wrong. I completely disagree. What we need to do is diversify income, let people be able to have multiple sources of earning. And that is the only way you can now introduce new taxes. So if you already overtax, if you target farmers, you are discouraging farmers to invest in farming. And what are you likely to get? More shortage of food and a weakening of Kenya shillings against the dollar. So what the president should be doing is to invest in projects that are able to regenerate revenue. We talk of agriculture, we expect more dams. He started on a very good footing when he advertised 35 dams. But we don't know what happened, because by 1 year, we should have expected many dams being constructed. And if you look at the way the country is, we have area with huge potential for agriculture, from Turkana, Northeastern, and the entire Ukambani. If you look at this, the quantity or in terms of acreage that's available in these areas is so huge, such that if the government invested in constructing dams and diverting water, the water flowing to Indian Ocean to these particular dams, the way Ethiopia did, this would have supported irrigated agriculture in a magnitude way or in a bigger way, in a way that many people in border today, the human capital, would actually be pushed to go and do the farming. And then you initiate contract farming between the millers and the workers. By doing so, you'll have mitigated shortage of food and the balance of trade between imports and export. Because today we are importing a lot of food that we are consuming as a nation. That could be mitigated. So once you have enough food for your people, one, you'll have saved so much money that goes through imports. And once you save this money now, you'll be able now to invest in other projects within the nation instead of introducing new taxes. Because the moment you introduce new taxes, you make things unbearable for Kenyans. And actually you demoralize your citizens, basically.
Okay. Dr. Soke, do you agree with this assertion that it would be wrong to include farmers in the tax bracket? Remember, the president would argue that I've tried my level best to subsidize production through distribution of fertilizer and improved seeds. Then I just need you to pay something. Once you you produce and you sell, you can also contribute. And it's actually in line with this promise to widen the tax bracket. Do you agree with the MP, what he says?
I think from a security perspective, I would be a little reluctant to tax food. Because remember, one of the basic roles of government is to provide security, and one of those security is food security for the country. And if you are able to ensure, if you are in a situation where you have made your country food secure, and food secure means the food is available, so you have subsidized production, and other than availability, you have made the food cheaper. So the supply and also the ability of people to buy it is also high. Then you will then have made one biggest milestone, just like having your defense forces defending your territory. It is actually equivalent to that. And if we go to an extent where we impose a lot of taxation on the food products, we might reach scenarios where, yes, you have subsidized production of the food is there, but then cartels take advantage of that, okay, and ensure that the cost of food becomes higher. So then it becomes no gain. You have so much food, people are, the cost of getting that food is still high, you have achieved nothing much in terms of food security. But then, as Mesh has said, and has been said, is that all the other countries that have developed, the first key thing is that they want to become food secure. Once they become food secure, they have actually put food security at the same level of national defense. And once they become food secure, they are able to buffer their country and now move into other areas like industrialization, building, whatever, trying now to build their diplomacy. Because they know within their borders, their people are full. Look at Uganda. Uganda, it might be lower than us in terms of economy, but in terms of food, they're way above us. So I will be a little careful championing for a tax regime that will impose heavily on food products in the country, because again, the other impact of that would be that the locally produced products could be a little expensive, and then to an extent that it is not able to compete with imported products. Okay. You already are seeing that on eggs in Kenya. The eggs from other countries are way cheaper than our eggs. So the farmers in Kenya would not even, however much you subsidize it, if as long as you have other taxes that are accruing onto it that makes the price of an egg higher, they will ask themselves, why do I need to rear chicken? Why don't I just go and import the eggs from somewhere else and come and sell it in the country? Cheaper. So it will have a negative impact on our production.
And that document from Treasury released last week by the CS, talking about the kind of medium-term plan and the taxation measures that they're proposing, also provided some justification of why they're doing that. And for example, by introducing fresh taxes on tobacco products, they're trying to encourage healthy living and to ensure that people are not consuming a lot of tobacco products that could be detrimental to their health. On the issue of petroleum products, because there are more taxations proposed, taxation measures proposed, the justification is that they're trying to discourage the use of fossil fuel and to promote the use of green energy. Do you think it is too early to try and promote green energy or to try and introduce carbon-related taxes at this point in time when we still do not have enough electric vehicles or electric motorbikes?
Thank you, Fred, because you can actually, from where you sit and you are not a taxation expert, you can point that one out. We'd first need to do the fundamental structures of bringing in green energy. Do we have enough electrical vehicles? Do we have charge stations? Remember, some of these electric vehicles are charged for 6 hours for them to do 120 kilometers. So do we have those charging stations? Do we have basic infrastructure on solar energy? Do we have basic infrastructure on all those, you talk of renewable energies? We do not have. If anything, we do not have the right registration from our parliament. Okay? So we will go there, but not now. We need to make baby steps towards that. And remember, taxation is in two ways. There is incentive creating taxation, and there is prohibitive tax. Prohibitive tax is used by government to curb those diversionary or those behaviors that are detrimental to the country, to the health of people. For example, the sin tax. Sin tax is imposed on beer, it is imposed on cigarettes. Those things, when you use them, you will be a burden to your country seeking health support. That is why we have sin tax. But incentive tax is that tax that is so moderated to encourage production, whereby you would find something like capital expenditure relief, whereby when you invest so much in something that is capital and will bring production so that we can employ so many people, you will have that investment relief that for 1 year, probably, you will enjoy free power and you will not pay tax. You see, that is incentive. So in our taxation regime, because every political dispensation has a taxation regime. In our regime, when we go through that taxation regime, it looks like it has been oriented towards prohibition. Nothing that is incentive. They are talking of taxing insurance to all those car owners. When they prove that the car is yours, you have owned the car, not from the bank, that the logbook is reading Fred, they will impose a certain percentage on your tax, on your insurance when you are taking the comprehensive. So what are they doing? They are prohibiting you from owning a car. Instead of looking at it, when Fred owns a pickup, for example, when he will be coming from to his workstation, he will be coming with eggs from wherever he lives or from his whatever home area, come and do what we call a side hustle and sell them to the residents of where he stays. You see? So besides what you do for a living here, you are also doing some wealth creation elsewhere. Because a nation moves through wealth creation. You create wealth, I create wealth, the other party creates wealth. When we all create this wealth and put it together, that is when we have the gross domestic product, or that national cake. So if you prohibit me here, you prohibit Muhesh here, you prohibit Daktari here from doing further production, what are you doing to this country? That is a great disservice to this country. Number two, the parliament that is there, you've had a sitting member of parliament admit, as much as he does not rubber stamp things, but a good number in that parliament just sits back to rubber stamp things. And thank you for that, Mheshimiwa. I really appreciate that independent mind. Remember, and I usually say this, when you are elected from your area, those people elected you because they felt that you be fit to be their representative in parliament. So you are not going to parliament to represent the thoughts of the current regime. You are there to represent the thoughts of your people. That is why you represent them. So it becomes a serious whatever. It is a sad state where we have a parliament that just sits there to please the executive. You are sugarcoating everything so that the executive does not pinpoint you out that Mheshimiwa so-and-so from this constituency does not agree with what I say. I remember there is a scenario I was reading. I was a young child by then, but we always read history. There is these members who used to be called the Six Bearded Sisters. I'm sure you must have heard that during those times. The Kenyatta government, they used to criticize the government, besides the threat of them being detained. I'm yet to see a parliament that is standing and saying, Mheshimiwa Rais, things on the ground are different. What you are doing is not right. And as I finish, when you talk of production, I remember when His Excellency the President was the Minister for Agriculture. He said it's time for this nation to stop relying on rain-fed agriculture. Okay? For the 1 year that they've been in parliament, or in government, what efforts have they made so that we can stop relying on rain-fed agriculture? You cannot single out free fertilizer as though production of agricultural products is based on fertilizer only. Fertilizer is just one of the factors within the equation. So let us guide our citizens in the right path.
Okay. And so we come back to the question, the position of Parliament now. I put it very correctly. And you've admitted that as it is right now, this Parliament is simply a rubber stamp. So where will we have this conversation if at all the executive says it will only get worse? Mwananchi is complaining here. Members of Parliament are saying, well, we can only rubber stamp. Surely. You said it here.
Well, what I want to make it to clarify.
Please clarify.
Yeah, because you see in Parliament we have two centers. We have the Azimio side and you have the Kenya Kwanza. The Kenya Kwanza, now today they have the numbers because they have even taken a portion of Azimio MPs who joined them as well, including the independent MPs. So now we have, it's like an equilibrium or a weighing scale where you have more numbers here, the scale is like this. So the opposition now, the ones who are standing with the Mwananchi, starting with Honorable Basil and others, we have few. Now the others, they have the numbers. So anything fronted on the floor is likely to sail through. And this is where we have a problem.
Does it concern you that the independence of Parliament is being questioned at this time?
It pains me.
That it is actually under the executive and under the whims of the executive, and whichever way the executive wants you to vote, that is how things will go.
You see, I've tried my level best. Like I want to make a reference and I want to go on record. One, as the chair for first-time members of Parliament and also the vice chair for young parliamentarians, which comprise members from either sides. I've tried to tell them, guys, it's a time we resonate with the reality and advise the government as the way things are. But the only challenge we have, when it comes to the Kenya Kwanza, anyone who tends to delink or to dissociate himself from what the executive wants tends to be de-whipped. We saw what happened with Wamushoma. When she tried to stand with the Mwananchi on the finance bill, what happened when she went to her constituency? A function was already organized there for her to be booed, you know? And these are the kind of actions that are initiated by Kenya Kwanza to ensure their team, their troop, remain intact. And this is against their constitution and the will of the people. Because in any system, in any legislature which is working, we should expect the Kenya Kwanza not just to support government for the sake of supporting the government. They should come out and say, here, things are wrong. As much, because they think as opposition, we oppose everything. We are not just opposing everything. For example, when President Ruto brought the Africa Climate Summit, that was a good initiative because so much money was brought in the country. The number of delegates who came to spend time in Nairobi came with the resources. That was a good move. But when we see so many travels, and also from the budget, when 2 trillion was put in executive, where we know in actual sense that money will never be replowed back. It's not a revolving fund. That is a fund where the money is going to be spent, but nothing comes out of it.
Okay.
You know, these are the kind of issues that we have been seeing and grappling with as members of parliament.
Dr. Saoke, the position of parliament is key. You listen to Mheshimiwa saying, and I quote, if at all the legislator was working the way it should, clearly, an admission from even members of parliament that they're not working as they should. The fact that we could have a parliament that is under the capture of the executive, that is where the problem is. Because the executive may speak the way they want and say it will only get worse, but without the checks and balances by the parliament, then where will Kenyans turn to? It is a failed system. If you should we actually say that our system has failed completely?
It's pretty a difficult situation. And, you know, one of the things that, we have to appreciate is that in the dynamics of governing a country, the different institutions are always fighting for dominance. That is expected. You'll expect the executive to fight for dominance. You'll expect the legislature to fight for dominance. You'll expect the civil society to fight for dominance, because the whole concept of politics is to sway opinion with the aim of having a say on where resources go. So every institution has a right to ensure that they have more say on, or their opinion have their way. And, you know, this is what the Constitution had envisioned. And, you know, the whole question of separation of powers and the independence of the different institutions, so that different institutions are able to work in a way that they are able to hold each other accountable. And I think this is now what we are expecting that is not happening. And it puts the country in a very difficult situation, where when you have one huge authority that has so much control and power over what happens in the country, and nobody can question it, the people...
We have a name for it.
...are left vulnerable.
Are we saying that we are looking at a possible dictatorship? Munyo Wayaki, the fact that parliament in itself cannot do anything, cannot think independently?
I can say yes, with a lot of authority. Why are we fighting for parties to fold up and make one party? You've seen the recent debates that from we call him Marara, 3 of us, that let us all fold up and make one party. But the dynamics down there, because I've ever run for elective posts, can tell you that these people do not want to be in one single state kind of a nation. That is indicator of dictatorship. Because you want to be in a party whereby the executive will be dictating what to be debated in parliament. That will erode the separation of power, as he has said. Number 2, why are we fearing when the civil society talks? Why are we unleashing policemen to hit them hard Why are we trying to gag the media? Remember, there is a time a certain CS had a problem with the Nation, others had a problem with the Sijui what media, all these type of shenanigans. Why do we want to gag Fred here? So those are indicators that are showing that we want to slide to dictatorship. And let me tell you, because I was there during now when the clamor of this liberation, the second liberation, because the first liberation was from the colonial government. The second liberation was from that dictatorial regime, which gradually grew at the very tail end of Jomo Kenyatta's government and the very formative years of Moi government, where they could say that there is only one party, where you had to wear a badge of KANU, where you could not speak ill against the sitting president, whereby when you have a divergent view in parliament, you are detained without trial. So these are the indicators. And if we do not come out fighting, those of us outside there, not in parliament, and those of them who are of the contrary opinion in parliament, and I respect those who have contrary opinion in parliament, because having a contrary opinion, let it be got right, is not opposing. Mm-hmm. You know, opposing is where you would say no without a valid reason. Mm-hmm. But having a contrary opinion is having a different line of thought.
Okay, and because of time, you can also make your final comments as I give the gentleman an opportunity to do the same.
Thank you. I usually like saying this. The family of Dr. Munywa Waiyaki is a very, was very instrumental in the independence of this country. And we hold this country at heart. So I'm begging sincerely to all the readers, wherever you are, let us hold this country fast. Let us know that we will be in Kenya and we will leave Kenya to our children. We hold this country in trust of our young generation. So let us not just do things for our selfish interest, because we will not be here forever, but Kenya will be here forever.
Okay. Thank you so much, Munywa Waiyaki. Honorable Basil, your opportunity.
Thank you. I think I would say it's a time for the president to resonate with the reality, because it's unfortunate when you are head of state and you don't seem to care about the people at the lowest level of the economics. So let him understand Kenyans are suffering, and let him revise his approach to collecting revenue. Taxation is not the only way. There are many ways of making money for the government without overtaxing Kenyans. Mm-hmm. Enough is enough. Kenyans are tired. So that's my message to the head of state.
What about to your fellow parliamentarians? Because there is a legitimate concern on what is happening in Parliament, because there will be a session for collecting public views on even some of the proposals, but the concern is that most of these public views go nowhere.
Well, what I would tell my fellow members of Parliament, we were all elected to serve Kenyans, and we are supposed to exercise this particular duty without just trying to please the head of state. This message goes, of course, to people in Kenya Kwanza and those who have already left the Azimio coalition and joined Kenya Kwanza. We have a mandate to serve Kenyans impartially. So it is the high time for members of Parliament to understand we were given responsibility by citizens to serve them. And we should do it in a very fair way without doing it just to please the executive. Because what's happening today, most of those in the Kenya Kwanza government, instead of telling the executive the truth, they are only telling him, the head of state, what he wants to hear. Mm-hmm. And this is not the time for any member of Parliament who was elected and given this responsibility by citizens to actually betray them, because this is basically betrayal, because things are extremely unbearable for most Kenyans. And I'm speaking as someone who understands what's going on, and I've also lived in many countries. So I understand what's happening in the country is not in the light of transforming the nation, but only enriching the rich and actually impoverishing the most poor. That is what's happening. And this is what the Charles Darwin's theory of survival for the fittest is coming to play. So we should not have a nation where some are enjoying when majority are suffering.
Okay. Finally, Dr. Churchill Saoke, you get to wrap it up for us.
Yeah, in brief, I think it's just to, to say that the greatest thing that a leader can do is to feel the people who you are leading, and to bring a leadership models and roles that would help them to make their lives better. And I think that it's a time for people in authority and power to take deep reflections on what the Kenyans are saying and ask themselves, are they doing the right thing? And if not, they change the different route. And in doing so, they need to be very careful about the role of global players, because global players can push you to do things that serve their interest at the expense of the people who put you in power.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Churchill Saoke, governance expert, Honorable Basil Robert, MP Yatta, and Munyo Wayaki, economist and politician, our panelists this morning, for helping us break down this issue of high cost of living, high fuel prices, high taxation. And this is definitely a conversation that will continue, not just this week, but throughout this year and the coming months as well. Remember our question today: has the Kenya Kwanza administration remained true to its promise of being hustler-friendly? You can continue interacting with us on our social media pages, TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya on Facebook. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this. Well, we continue with the show, but for now, let's take a break. You're watching Morning Cafe.